Today, I would like to continue my discussion centered around Catherine Kimball Mizelle, the judge from Florida who lifted the mask mandate. God bless her. The last time when I was just running long, I never intended for this to be 2 episodes. In fact, this will probably be a fairly short episode. We'll talk about a couple of things that came up at the end of that episode, and it was centered around the daily cost, the DK. We'll just call them the DKs, okay? They went on this rant about how great our bureaucracy is because Catherine Kimball Mizelle, she overruled the bureaucracy. And the Daily Cause, or the dicks, they are saying, hey, our bureaucracy is great. It's fantastic. Now, keep it in mind, these are people who worship at the altar of the federal government. Now, I read part of this the last time, so this is a little bit of a repeat to start, so bear with me. Whoever was writing this article, and they did not credit the article to one person, but it says our bureaucracy does a whole bunch of things that we take for granted every day. NOAA, N-O-A-A, funds and runs the weather predictions that private websites make available with hourly and daily forecasts. The FAA, TSA, and NTSB ensure the safety and safe operation of our aircraft and our car and truck traffic. The FDA makes sure that drugs we take are safe and effective, not useless or harmful snake oil. OSHA, the USDA, and the EPA make our workplace and food safe and our environment less unhealthy. Our bureaucracy sends U.S. seniors Social Security checks or direct deposits reliably every month through Medicare and Obamacare. It makes sure that seniors and others have medical insurance who otherwise might not. In other words, and this is in conclusion, in other words, our courts are to let the experts do their thing, not play ideological commissars in the old Soviet Union. So let me break this load of crap down here. First of all, NOAA. Yes, we do have a national weather service that predicts weather. Why? That way you don't have 500 people getting killed by a tornado, or you don't have 2,000 people getting killed in a hurricane because they didn't know it was coming. There's a point to it. And what they do does improve our lives. There are the FAA, TSA, NTSB. My brother is an aircraft mechanic, and he told me when you read the regulations that are in place when it comes to flying on a plane, for example, and I'll never forget him telling me this. He said every one of those regulations was literally written in blood because somebody died because something was done, so they had to regulate that. For example, did you know that airplane windows used to be square? I didn't know this. I watched the History Channel one day and I don't remember what, I think it was engineering disasters or something like that. But they were talking about an airplane that came apart in the middle of the air and some poor flight attendant got sucked out and killed. And what they found was that these square windows, there were stress fractures in the square windows, and these planes are pretty much aluminum and they come apart. So if you notice, airplane windows are oval. They're not square. None of the windows on a plane are square for that very reason. Well, that is something that I'm not an expert at, you're not an expert at. So I agree. These guys are experts. Think about the dashboards of a car. When I was a kid, there were a bunch of steel knobs and the dashboards were harder than hell. Now they're all soft and cushioned. There are no steel knobs. I mean, all of these things happen because people were dying left and right, and they have done studies and made things better. As far as the FDA making sure that the drugs we take are safe, well, yes, but because it's a bureaucracy, when you want to get a drug approved, it takes years for them to get approved. That's why a lot of people leave the country to go do experimental drugs, because you can't do that in the United States. So in that case, the bureaucracy is kind of in the way. Now, as far as Social Security goes, and yes, I honestly am a believer that it is a good thing that elderly people have a monthly income when they reach the point where they cannot work. The problem is the way it is done. It is highly wasteful. I think what would be best is if the federal government, when you reached a certain age, required you to find an account or to establish an account of some sort that you cannot touch until you're 65 and make you put your money in it. You have say over where it's going, but you're required by, I would be okay even if they said you're required by law to do it, because when you hit 65, the government can't take care of you. When Social Security started, we had one retiree for every 4 workers. Was it every 4 or every 2? Is it every 2 or every 4? But my point being, there was at least double the workers than retirees. Now that number's flipped. So the system is broken, and this guy's defending the bureaucracy And the fact of the matter is the bureaucracy doesn't work. I did a podcast back when I first started podcasting, but it was over how bad the New Deal was. And the New Deal is what gave us Social Security and gave us a lot of programs. And these people worship these programs and think these programs are great, and they're not. They're horrible, horrible programs. I mean, the vast majority of the New Deal was a failure. And unfortunately, a lot of people actually believe that the New Deal is what ended the Great Depression. It didn't. It did not end the Great Depression. And I will do a podcast over that coming up, hopefully in the next couple, 3 episodes. I'll dig that one out, redo it to where I can condense it down to get it done in time on here. Because I think it was a 25, 30-minute episode in the old days. And so I'll get that thing condensed down. But my point being, this guy's defending Social Security. And then he said through Medicare and Obamacare. Obamacare's a joke. Medical costs are a joke. It all started back when Ted Kennedy in the early 80s started messing with the way healthcare was done in the United States. It has exploded the cost. These people sit around and bitch about the rich. They're the ones making a lot of people rich because of their bureaucracy. Then there was this guy, Sam Stein, and then there was a Steve Bannon. And these two dicks, they go on and they were ripping Judge Mizelle. And Sam Stein said, the judge who made this ruling is 35 years old and confirmed at the age of 33 during lame duck judiciary matters. Yeah, it matters, dude. And here's the thing. The fact that she was 35 and 33, so what? So what? You know, John F. Kennedy was the youngest president elected. Teddy Roosevelt was the youngest president ever when he served. Are you telling me these guys were bad presidents because they were young? I mean, look at Joe Biden. That some bitch is old as dirt. And he's the worst president in U.S. history. Clearly, an accumulation of age is not an indicator that you can do your job well. I referenced this the last episode. There was a guy who went on, I read the article. I just read some of the Sam Stein comments on foxnews.com. And at the end of the article, there was a segment where people could make comments. 2 comments really stuck out at me. I did not write these guys' names down. The first one says, as a retired lawyer, I think it is beneficial for a trial judge to have experience as a trial lawyer. In this case, however, there was no trial. The case presented a pure legal question, something Mizelle was clearly qualified to resolve based on her experience at the appellate level. Excellent. The next guy said, I too am a retired attorney, and I see that no one seems to mention the fact that an extreme minute percentage of attorneys ever qualified to intern with a Supreme Court justice. This woman had more experience under Clarence Thomas than most attorneys have in their entire life. Thank you very much. That's exactly right. I already told you about Ketanji Brown. Now, don't get me wrong, Ketanji Brown, she was a Supreme Court justice clerk as well. She was in private practice. She had no trial. She had none before she became a district judge. The same as Mizelle. Why didn't anybody bitch about her? I mean, I think the answer is as obvious as black and white. So these guys, Steve Bannon and Sam Stein, and they're not the only two, because CNN, boy, they just had a heyday with it. Gonna give you an example of justices or judges who overreached, who played activists as judges. I don't believe Mizelle did. I think she looked at it and said, look, the CDC is overstepping their bounds here by having this mandate. I don't think she looked at it from a Republican standpoint. That's the great thing. Here's why the left has an advantage. Conservative judges literally interpret the Constitution, and whether it works to Republicans' favor or not, they do their rulings the way they do their rulings. Liberals don't. They're going to rule liberally every single time. And that's why Republicans lose far more than they ever win when it comes to the courts, because the justices we put up there do their job. And the justices that the Democrats put up there, they don't care about the country. They don't care about they want you to feel good and be fair. And they don't read the Constitution. Helvering versus Davis, 1937. Helvering upheld the constitutionality of Social Security on the basis that Congress has a general power to spend on whatever it deems to be in the general welfare. This ruling completely upended the system of enumerated powers in which Congress only had the powers delegated to it by the Constitution, and eviscerated the 10th Amendment that restricted the federal government to its defined roles. Since Helvering, Congress can spend money on anything it wants, facilitating the welfare state and the immense growth of the federal government of the last 80 years. If I had to make a rough estimate, I would say 75% or more of the spending currently done by the federal government relies on this holding in Helvering. making the overwhelming majority of what the federal government does unconstitutional. Thus, Helvering is the central case that flipped the system from limiting the government to what is explicitly allowed to permitting anything that isn't explicitly banned, effectively ending federalism. Thank you very much. That's exactly right. Because of an activist court who they said, oh, hey, Congress can do whatever they want. As a result, we are $30+ trillion in debt. The welfare state is in existence and it hasn't solved poverty in any way whatsoever. All they've done is create a nation of dependents, a nation of people that suck on the tit of the government, done by activist judges like Ketanji Brown, not by judges like Catherine Kimball Mizelle. This just goes to show you that liberals only care about government power. Screw your rights. We want government power. We want masks because it keeps you in check. We want restrictions because they keep you in your place. It also allowed them to have a fraudulent presidential election in 2020. And you can say what you want about that. Yeah, it was fraudulent. All these things have given the Democrats their power. And that's all this is about. This is not about, will those masks save lives? They don't save lives. The only thing that pisses these people off is that Judge Mizelle took away liberal power. See ya.